In this lesson, we're going to cover Big Idea 4, Standard 1, Names and Formulas of Covalent Compounds. So we name covalent compounds a little differently than we name ionic compounds. For covalent compounds, we are going to use prefixes to indicate the number of atoms. There is a list of these prefixes in your chemistry resource packet, but we'll go through them so you have them in your notes as well. If there was only one of an atom, we are going to use the prefix mono. If there are two of them, we use the prefix di. 3, we would use tri. A lot of these you should be familiar with, like a tricycle or a triangle. Tri means 3. Tetra is 4. 5 is penta. Pentagon, 5 sides. 6 is hexa, like a hexagon. 8 we should be familiar with, octa, like an octagon. 10, deca, like a decade, it's 10 years. So again, these are listed in your resource packet. There is a table that has all of them, but this way we have it in your notes as well. So what I mean by we use a prefix to indicate the number of atoms. If I had S3, Cl5, this prefix 3, this number 3 is going to get the prefix tri. And then S is sulfur, so this would be tri-sulfur. I have 5 chlorines, the prefix for 5 is penta. And then just like for ionic, we're going to drop the end of chlorine and add IDE. This compound would be tri-sulfur pentachloride. There are a few rules that we need to know. Number 1, that prefix mono is never used on the first element. So let's say my compound was ClF. I only have 1 chlorine, but chlorine comes first. Never use mono when there is only one of the first element. So I just write chlorine. I do not write monochlorine. We do use mono on the second element. So I only have 1 fluorine, so I'm going to use that prefix mono. And then again, we drop the ending and add IDE. This would be chlorine monofluoride. Next rule. We are going to drop the A or the O from the prefix if the element starts with O. So let's say I had Cl2O. So we'll use a prefix to indicate the number of atoms. The prefix for 2 is di. So this would be dichlorine. I only have 1 oxygen, and that prefix is mono. What we would want to do is drop this O. we don't want that double O. It's not going to be monoxide. So we're going to drop the O, and it just becomes monoxide. So this is dichlorine monoxide. Drop the O from the prefix if the element starts with O. This is also true if we have an A. Let's say I had N2O4. So again, the prefix for 2 is di. This would be dinitrogen. The prefix for 4 is tetra. But again, we don't want that double vowel before our O's. So we're going to drop the A from the prefix. So this becomes dinitrogen tetroxide. Dinitrogen tetroxide. It's not tetraoxide. We drop that A. Last two rules. These ones you should be familiar with for ionic compounds. Never change the ending. Don't change the suffix. Never change the ending of the first element. So notice that we didn't change the spelling. This is chlorine, not chloride. This is nitrogen, not nitride. This is sulfur, not sulfide. Do not add IDE on the first element, only for the second element. For the second element, we are going to drop the ending and add IDE. Let's do some examples. So let's start by naming. All right, first one, Ni3. I have one nitrogen, but remember, we never use mono on the first element. Never change the ending of the first element. So I would just write nitrogen. I have 3 iodines. The prefix for 3 is tri. I'm going to put in that root word iodine, but I'm going to drop the ending and add IDE. This is nitrogen triiodide. Do not drop the I. We only drop A's and O's, and we only drop them before elements that start with O. We do have this double I here, triiodide. B. Prefix for 4 is tetra, and P is phosphorus. Prefix for 10 is deca, but I'm going to drop the A from deca since my element starts with O. I'm going to drop the end of oxygen and add IDE. Tetra, phosphorus, decoxide. I do use a prefix before phosphorus. The only time that we are not using a prefix is if there is one of the first element. Last one, C. I only have one carbon. Prefix for 1 is mono, but again, we don't use mono on the first element. We don't change the ending of the first element, so I'm just going to write carbon. 1 oxygen. Prefix for 1 is mono, but since oxygen starts with an O, I'm going to drop the O for mono. And then again, drop the ending of oxygen and add IDE. This is carbon monoxide. Let's go the other way. So now I'll give you the name and you write the formula. A. Let's do chlorine pentafluoride. B. Dinitrogen monoxide. C. Disulfur decachloride. Alright, symbol for chlorine, elemental symbol is Cl. It doesn't have a prefix, so I know that means there's just one of them. Pentafluoride. Penta means 5, so I have 5 fluorides. B, dinitrogen. That prefix di means 2, so I have 2 nitrogens. Monoxide, 1 oxygen. And C, disulfur. Again, di means 2, so I have 2 sulfurs. Decachloride. Deca is the prefix for 10, so Cl10.